25th, 26th, and 27th for a 3-day special streaming event, Strange Realities, to push the limits of your reality. Featuring authors, academics, researchers, occultists, experiencers, podcasters, and practitioners. All presenting fresh cutting-edge material and research.
Streaming live.
Featuring presentations by
Brent Rains,
editor of Alternate Perceptions magazine,
Aaron Gullius,
host of the Saucer Life podcast,
David Metcalf,
writer and researcher,
Alan Greenfield,
author of Secret Cipher of the Euphonauts,
Stephanie Quick,
writer and blogger,
Red Pill Junkie,
Fortean researcher and explorer,
Tim Banal,
host of Banal of America,
Guy Malone,
iconoclast and troublemaker,
Timothy Ritter,
host of Strange Familiars,
Kiki Dombrowski,
author and practitioner,
Greg Bishop,
author of Project Beta,
Jenny Ashford,
host of 13 O'Clock,
Recluse,
host of The Farm,
Jack Montgomery,
Folk Magic,
Joshua Cutchin,
author of Thieves in the Night,
Reverend Michael Carter,
Alien Contact Experiencer,
Dr. Future,
host of Future Point,
Tony Kale,
author of Memphis Hoodoo,
Rin Collier,
occultist,
Soraya Ascap,
host of Where Did the Road Go, John Tenney, Ghost Stalkers and Hell.
all 3 days, only $20. Tickets and info available at strangerealitiesconference.com. Brought to you by the Conspiranormal Podcast, conspiranormal.com. Strange Realities.
Okay. Welcome, guys.
Hey,
Welcome to the past. Welcome to a time when we're going to hark back to a time when people could actually go out and do things in the real world.
yep.
And we're going to do it virtually. I don't exactly know how that works, but that's what we're going to do. So, hello, Surfiel.
Hey, you guys are going to get a special treat today for everyone who wasn't able to make it to Strange Realities 2019 that we had in Nashville, Tennessee last year. We did get excellent video, and it was excellently edited and put together and will be presented to everybody today. So you get to either relive or experience that for the first time.
That's right. And we're streaming both to our YouTube channel, which is YouTube and Conspiranormal podcast. And we are streaming to the Facebook page for Conspiranormal. And we hope you guys are going to join us. Looks like we got three watchers right now. Two of them were probably us. So we probably only have one. But guys, we're going to start going back in the Wayback Machine on October 19th. 2019. We're going to start with a presentation with Mark Anthony Wyatt, and his presentation is on his beloved, as he likes to talk about a lot on this show, Cornwall, and his presentation is called Smoke, Fire, and Alchemy: The Blurring of Fact and Fiction to Pre-War Cornwall. If you guys are ready, we're going to go ahead and play.
And just to be clear, we have a new conference coming up that's going to be streaming next month, not too far away at all. And so we're kind of showing you guys a flavor of what we will have in store for next month.
All right, cool. Let's do it. Start off with Mr. Mark Anthony Wyatt.
All right, welcome to the Strange Realities Conference 2019, the inaugural event. I see some familiar faces in the crowd, and I see some people I haven't met before, so hopefully by the end of all this, we will be friends. So I am Adam Sane. I am one of the hosts of the Conspiranormal podcast. And we have been a podcast for about 7 years. There's a couple of people in here that have been on the podcast. Rob, the sound guy, is my old producer, still the executive producer of Conspiranormal. And Seraphiel back here in this fedora is the co-host. So, welcome, guys. I hope that it's going to be a good conference. We've got some good people Tim Banal from Coast to Coast AM news editor. You'll see him milling around. Joshua Cutchin, this guy back here. Joe DeMari, Guy Malone in the back. Timothy Renner of Strange Familiars fame. That's why I'm wearing this flannel. Mark Anthony Wyatt, who's going to be the first speaker. And Zach Hunt, he's sitting over here. And Tim Banal's walked in the door.
Yeah.
Superstar, man. And we're going to be here to entertain. This guy right here is helping me out with the MC, Mr. Jason Vonstein, and he's going to be playing later on.
Oh, yeah.
Just some notes, guys. So with the schedule, we have a lunch break after the second speaker. And then we're coming in for about like 4 more speakers, and then we've got a dinner break. So one note about the lunch break, that's on restaurants around. There's a couple, there's Party Fowl up the street. There's, I think, Arnold's. Is that right, Sergio? Yes, sir. Okay. So there's several things down 8th Avenue that you guys can do. Go eat, that's for about an hour. And dinner break. We are taking the dinner break, but we are going to have pizza coming for all you guys. So, yeah. So you guys will stick around, and this gentleman right here is going to be performing during the dinner break. Mr. Macho Man Randy Savage.
Oh, yeah.
So guys, that's pretty much it. We have t-shirts, they are $20, and in the back there are chips, drinks, water is in the fridge, it is free, but the chips and drinks and fruit, they are $1 each. So please take advantage of that if you guys are hungry. Also, it is BYOB. If you want to bring your own beer, you can. There's a fridge in the back. There is a cooler. During lunch break, guys come back if you want to stash some beer in there. Enjoy your beer while you're listening to some awesome paranormal related talks and presentations by these awesome guys, all of which have been on Conspiranormal Podcasts.
Woo! Woo!
All right, so we are a little early. Mark Anthony Wyatt, if you are ready to start, we can.
One quick announcement.
What's that?
Back to 7 hours of the keep flying
There's a black Chevy Malibu blocking the dock. It does not have a dead alien in the trunk that we know of, so if you have a black Chevy Malibu, please move it as soon as you possibly can. All right, so let's get Mark over here. Oh, by the way, the t-shirts, I want to give a shout out. Those are designed by Holly back here. Show her some love by contributing to her artwork. It's pretty awesome. It's got our little Sasquatch hiding from ghosts on it. So, all right, guys. We're going to get Mark up here, get him set, and he's going to tell you about, what are you going to, about cornball and folklore
Yeah,
or something.
yeah, you'll see. You'll see.
All right.
Okay. Okay.
All right, guys, give this guy a hand.
Oh, yeah.
Right. I'm not at all nervous, of course, you know. And as you can tell, I'm a local. You can tell by my accent. So, and I'm not from Australia, despite what everyone thinks. I've had that about 5 times in Illinois. Before I get going on to the major speech that I prepared, I'll just give you a tiny bit of background. And as you can see up there, it's not a very flattering photo, but that's me at home. So I come from Cornwall in the UK, and it's the extreme west of England. Although, I mean, politically and so on, it's England. But if you speak to the locals there, who've been born and raised there and so on, which I wasn't actually, they see themselves as Cornish, not English. And, okay. So I'll just read this just until I get flowing. So I was actually born on the site of the gunpowder works in Surrey, in like the countryside. And while I was there, although I knew nothing about it because I was only there for like 18 months, my father had an encounter with we think it was a gunpowder worker that had been blown to pieces. It had a 400-year history. There were loads of tragic events. And you hear a lot of people say that, you know, when they see ghosts and that, there's nothing to be scared of. And in my experience, I have seen lots of stuff. I'm 59 now, I've seen it all my life. I don't know why, but I just do. In my experience, I've never had a scary experience yet. But my father's experience was totally different. And due to that experience, he used to hate talking about it. He would change the subject. And eventually that became a story that I told on Jim Harold's campfire about 3 years ago. So let's see where we are. So that's my sort of past. That's where I'm from. I moved to Cornwall, which is about 300 miles away from that gunpowder works, about 20 years ago, I suppose. When I was about 7 or 8 and I began to hear the story about my dad, I became fascinated by the whole sort of ghost thing, you know. And I would just read anything that was going on the subject. And I started off in things like, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, Charles Dickens' The Signal Man. It's like a railway ghost story. And I loved that, I always still do. Peter Underwood, I don't know if you've heard of him. He did the Gazetteer of British Ghosts. He's like a big name in the English supernatural paranormal world. Algernon Blackwood was another one. I just read anything I can get my hands on, and then gradually got into people like Arthur Shuttlewood, a great name, who was, he wrote all about the Warminster Mystery, where they had this thing they called The Thing. And they had regular UFO sightings. It's near Wiltshire, where they have all the crop circles, but it's actually in Wiltshire. So just moving forward, because I want to get on to the actual presentation. All of my life, I've had these experiences, as I say, and just periodically, and it's never really stopped. And I now spend a lot of time in Illinois with Janice, and we still have experiences, and Janice is very similar. She's very sensitive to this stuff, so she sees things and hears things too. And just in probably about a year ago, I had an experience where just during the morning, I was stood in the front of this old house where Janice lives, just idly looking out on a sunny morning, and a little girl ran out from like 2 doors down and ran down the street. And then she was like black and white, almost like a charcoal drawing. And at the time, I didn't think, oh, she's a ghost or whatever. I just thought it's a little girl. And then she sort of veered off and crossed the road and disappeared down, well, not literally disappeared, but she ran off down this drive. And the more I thought about what I'd seen, it wasn't a normal little girl. It was just like a sketch that somebody had drawn. And she had something under her arm. It looked like a laptop. I thought it was a laptop, but I don't think it's probably a book or something. My first thought was she was burgling the house, because I'd heard that small children do evidently do that in Springfield, Illinois. I mean, it's no news to me because we don't have that. But I never saw that little girl ever again, and I've been there, a long time since. And she's definitely not one of the neighbours. She's not a granddaughter, so it's mostly older people in the street. And I think I still think I saw something some sort of spirit. We've also had experiences in Janice's house in the last year or so. I won't bore you with it all, but on one occasion we were sat in the kitchen just talking about random stuff, and there was a noise, quite loud noise from the front room. I went to see what the noise was, and my mobile phone I'd left it on a little side table by the sofa, and it was now over there on the floor. There was no one in the room, no animals, nothing. So we have all these sort of things. And I think living with Janice, we sort of amplify this stuff somehow. I don't know how. So it's all around us. We have guests to the house who hear ladies speaking in the house. I've not heard that myself. And people who are not connected pick up on the same things. You know, we've got quite a lot of people who are into this stuff. So, okay. So with all that, I'd just say that I'm not a ghost investigator as such. I have done a few things like that in the past, but it tends to come to me. I don't need to go looking for it really, because I see enough of it anyway. Let's just pass forward here. So yeah, just to look at that, just so you know, the bottom left is a place called Mennan Toll. That's in Penwith in the far west of Cornwall where I live now. The one on the right was absolutely filthy wet day, and I've just climbed up on those rocks. That's called Rose Wall, and it's pretty high, and it overlooks, in Cornwall, you're never more than like 15 to 20 miles away from the sea. So when you're up that top of that hill, sitting on that granite, you can more or less, well, you can see both sides of the peninsula. So if you imagine, I'll show you a map in a minute, but it's high enough to see both sides. And there's a sort of special atmosphere up there as well. And I've been going up there since I was probably 12. Used to go up there with my dad. I've had a strange experience actually up there where a little black hound with red eyes appeared when I was with a mate when I was about 16. We were actually on top of those rocks listening to Pink Floyd Animals at the time. I always remember it. It was a sunny day. And this little hound, and there are legends of hounds there, but I didn't know back then, sort of like phantom hounds, which is where they got the idea for Hound of the Baskervilles. I don't know if you've heard of that, Conan Doyle. So we saw that, and my friend was not into this stuff at all. He still isn't. He's convinced it was just a dog with bad eyes, you know, but it had like red eyes. It was very strange, and it took a lot of interest in us. It sort of came up to us and just stood there and stared at us, and it was very misty, and it just went off in the mist, you know. And we were waiting for the owners to come and collect their dog, and they never did. So anyway, just moving on from there. Right. Okay. So this is an expression that kept coming up because I had a weird experience. So owls, and it started off with my son saying it to me. I'll explain why in a minute. And then a bit later, a few days later, I suppose, a friend of mine who comes from the Midlands of England, who has a very deep voice like this, and he actually said, "Owls aren't that big, Mark," and it's just stuck with me. And so, as it says there, it was like 2015, and it was like late one night. I was sitting at home on my own, and I was half reading a book. I was actually reading a book about Horatio Nelson, which is a little bit of an interest of mine. And you know, HMS Victory, I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a turning point in history, really. And I was also sort of half watching the telly, and I was waiting for a phone call from my son. And I dropped him off. As I said, I dropped him off in a village just up. It's all very, very rural. Very rural. There's not much there. It's just by the coast and so on. And I dropped him off at 7 o'clock. He said to me, "I'll ring you at about 10:30, Dad." And then I had to go back and pick him up. So there we are. So that's my son. He was with that band at the time. He was rehearsing. So I'm sitting there and the phone rings, and I was pretty much wide awake really, because I was half expecting this call. I was very aware that it was coming. And he said, "I'm ready, Dad. Can you come and get me?" You know. So I said, "Yeah, I'll be right up there." And that is where it goes really weird. Next thing I know, the phone's ringing again. And to me, it's like 2 seconds maybe later. And I pick the phone up and I say, "Hello?" And it's my son again. He said, "Where the," I'm not going to say it, but okay, well, where the fuck are you, Dad? So I said, "Well, I've just told you I'm coming up." And he said, "Dad, that was 2.5 hours ago." So I had just well, I just blacked out or something. I don't know what happened. So that was, I was obviously a bit annoyed about that because he'd been waiting, and his mate that he was with in this garage playing, and a few others, they wanted to go to bed. This is like 1:30, I think, in the morning by now. And of course, they were having to sit around waiting with my son until I went up to get him. So, and I should just point out, I hadn't been drinking. I wasn't particularly tired really either, and I was very aware that he was going to call me. So let's just fast forward here a bit. Okay, so I rush out the house, and it's just a normal night, sort of quiet night. It was a full moon, but it was quiet. It's very rural, not much on the road at that time of night. And because it was so quiet, I knew that I could just put my foot down and just head straight. So this is where I was heading, but I'll explain about that in a minute. And you can see the sea over the back. That's Bude Bay. So it's a really beautiful area, that. And I just put my foot down and went straight up through this sleepy little village called Pottville. And I knew there'd be nothing on the road, but I was still a bit wary just in case, you never know. And the police have a habit of hanging out by the factories in the top of that town, because they know they're going to catch the lads leaving the factories who are going to, in a rush to get home to go to bed. So they are about occasionally, so I was a bit wary. But I went up there like a rally driver, really, just charging up there so you wouldn't have to wait much longer. And it's about a 10-minute trip, I suppose. Now, this is an old picture of the site where this strange event happened. So that cottage is not there now, and it wasn't there. They call it Inch's Shop because in the old days, people were tied to the land, so that if they were like farm labourers, they could only spend their money or tokens in the farm shop. They weren't allowed to go and buy it elsewhere. But everyone was sort of very local, but that was demolished years ago. So I eventually turned up at this junction, which is now like it's a quiet road. It's like country lanes, but it's not quite as rural looking as that now. It's got proper markings on the road and everything. And from that junction, I appeared at that junction, and I could have just pulled out because the chances of any cars coming from my left or right were very, very remote at 1:30 in the morning. It's a very quiet place. But I slowed down just in case, you never know. And just to point out that to the left of that place, if I'd gone maybe about a mile, there's a place called GCHQ, which is like this MI5, what's the other one? NSI, is it what's your security agency? Not the FBI, the NSA. It's like the alphabet agencies, isn't it? Because so that is over there, very close. You can see it. They've got these massive dishes, and it has UFO activity quite a lot. I know somebody who's actually pictured a UFO above the site, spying on the spies. So they're connected to, as I say, to America and so on. In fact, they're mostly Americans that work there, really. And if you ask them what they do for a living, they say, I could tell you, but then I'd probably have to kill you. It's like a very tired joke. So, and down on the right, down that lane on the right, is the site of a battle in the English Civil War, 1643, where hundreds of people were killed. So this whole area has got this weird stuff going on, and there's in my book, there's quite a few stories that came from around that area. So I appear at the junction, and I'm looking left and right, and as I'm about to turn right, I notice just about sort of about here somewhere. But as I say, it's all a bit more modern now. There was an owl, and this owl was probably about that high, I suppose. Well, I thought it was an owl. That was high, and it's just stood in the road, and it's staring at me. And I just thought, well, that's crazy. That's right in the road, and I want to go that way. So I sort of moved. I was at a Suzuki Vitara. Let's just show you a scale of the thing. So that's the car I had at the time. And the reason it's got a bonnet is because we don't, I think you call it hood, we call them bonnets. And it was actually above the silver line where the T of bonnet is, it was actually, I could see it above that. It was that close to me. It was like, yeah, probably where that screen is, I suppose. And it just stood there, and it was right in my way. I had to go through it to go to get my son. So I waited patiently, and it just wouldn't shift. It just stood there looking at me, and it was weird. It was very strange. It looked like an owl to me, and it just wouldn't shift. So I had my window undone, and I was yelling at it, sort of swearing at it, just hoping it would move. And eventually it did move. I think I was there probably 5 minutes. It just wouldn't go, and I didn't want to obviously hurt it. And when it took off, it went past my driver's door, and as you know, we drive on the other side, so we're sitting on the other side. And so it came past me that way, and the wings just went like that, and the car shook, which was really strange, you know. It's really, I could feel the movement of the car. And as it went past me, it was actually staring in at me, like with these very, very strange eyes, just staring at me. And I thought, well, that's just a very big owl, but it didn't go through my mind that it wasn't an owl. I just thought it's an owl, but it hadn't hit me yet that owls aren't that big. So I sort of put it out of my mind, went down the lane, went to pick my son up, didn't mention it to him at that point, drove back. And when I got back to that junction to go back down the hill, I thought, oh, I've just seen an owl. So I told my son, Dexter, who was up there early with his guitar, I told him what I'd seen, and I told him how big it was. And he said, owls aren't that big, Dad. And it sort of puzzled me the next few days. I thought, well, what was it? So I started doing a bit of research, looking at big birds. And we do get birds that get blown off course when they're, what's the word, when they're going out to other areas. They sort of get blown off on the Atlantic, they get blown into Cornwall and Ireland. So I know that happens. And I looked at like giant eagle owls and stuff like that, and they were actually up to about 2 foot. Whereas the one I saw was clearly above that bonnet, which I think, I mean, I never did measure it, but I think it's probably 3 foot minimum, I would say, probably a bit more. So I had a friend I was just calling in on an older friend, and Derek, he's into all this stuff too. He'd love to be here. And he's the guy from Birmingham, and I just told him what happened, and he went, owls aren't that big, Mark. So we started looking. He had this thing called the Observer Book of British Birds, and we went through that, and we did a bit of other research. Now, there's a lot more to that story which came up later, but I'm not going to bore you with that full story now. It's in the book, but I did a lot of research, and there were synchronicities that followed that. When I was actually writing the story, I'll just tell you briefly, I was listening to a thing called Expanded Perspectives, and I just finished writing that whole thing out. I wasn't going to put it in the book at all. And Janice said to me, she said, well, whatever it was, even if it was just a big flesh and blood bird, it is a great story. You need to put it in there. And I spent about 3 hours, I suppose, just writing it out and trying to remember everything I could. And I literally just finished, and I thought, I need a beer. I'm just so tired of hitting the keys, you know. So I sat down on the sofa and just looked for a podcast, and I saw this one with an owl on it. And I thought, oh, that looks interesting. And it was Expanded Perspectives. And the first story wasn't that interesting to me, but then all of a sudden they started talking about these big owls, and I thought, well, that's weird, because that's what I saw. And they were discussing, I think they mentioned Mike Cleland as well. And then one of the guys, I think his name was Cam or Kyle, or whatever it was, he had a letter, I think it was, from a guy in Texas. And he read the letter out from the guy in Texas, and it was really weird, because as you can tell, I'm English. To me, Texas at that point, it's to an English boy, it was like this hot place with, I don't know, palm trees. I know I'm wrong, but that's what I used to think. And I now know, but it's quite similar to our place. It's lots of different landscapes. And so sorry to lose track. So I'm sitting there, and my ears pricked up to talking about owls and stuff, and he reads his letter out, and he says, everything this guy said was almost exactly what I'd just written out. And my head was still in the zone of writing it all out. And I actually, I think I actually swore or something. What did I say? I don't know. Yeah, and I knew that sounded stupid because, like, even when I said it, I thought that's stupid. But it was almost exactly the same story. And the reason I picked that one story to sort of start this thing out is because, in retrospect, looking back at this, that was an event which completely, or may have been, the thing that changed my life completely. Because since then, I mean, I'd begun to sort of document all the things that had happened to me since I was a toddler that I could remember. Like, even to this day, I keep thinking of other things that happened, you know. And I put it out in this book called Wyatt's Weird World, which led me to telling a story on Jim Howard. Then it led me towards, Soraya Azkaf. And it sort of went around, and of course, Adam, which is, you know, begun a friendship with Adam. And we came over to Adam about 3 years ago, and he showed us around Nashville. Very, very knowledgeable guy. Thanks, Adam. So, you know, it started off a friendship there. I met, the most important thing is I met Janice through, she was listening to, I think it was Jim Howard. And then she thought, oh, I quite like the idea of that book. I'll read that book. And she loved bits, she felt there were bits in that book which spoke to her, sort of resonated with her. So she went and bought the book. She loved it. Well, so she tells me. And at some point we started communicating. So, because my email was in the back and so on. But I promised I won't talk about her, so because she gets embarrassed.
I was not a stalker.
So where was I at? So there's like this sort of, I mean, I didn't know that at the time, but I think there's like this sort of important element in it, which it's like somehow when people see these things, their lives change. So in my case, I wrote the first book and met Janice and so on, so on, so on. So I'm probably missing half of what I was going to tell you, but okay, so that's pretty much what so that's the first one. It's a pretty lousy cover, I can see that now. It was one of those that you just buy on Kindle, you don't buy, they're just there. Whereas now I'd do a better cover, but there you go, experience. So just quickly get onto this. So there's the one on the left is, you'll probably recognise, is Britain. Well, it's England, Wales, Scotland. I don't want to patronise because I'm sure you know all this stuff, but just in case you don't. So England's up there, Wales is that pig's head there. That's his pig head. And it's like a little boy running to market with a pig under his arm. That's what they say. You look at that. And that's where I was born. That's where Gunpowder works from. And that's where I live. That's Cornwall. And I'm actually right down at the end. So you can see that when you're on high ground, it's only a few miles wide. But I mean, that piece there, where I actually live, it's 3 miles from coast to coast. And it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So there's that bit blown up. So most of the stuff I'm going to talk about is happening from that point there. Incidentally, this global warming stuff, they claim that if the sea rises so many, I don't know, but if it rises so many meters, that piece will become an island. The piece I live on will literally split about 5 minutes drive from my house, and I will live on an island. Because it's so low there. It's this high granite ground, and then you've got like this low sandy area. So, and the reason it says a place apart is more sort of like I started with, because I'll just tell you really, really quickly because I don't want to bore you with this bit. Don't know how we do it at the time. Right. So the first people to settle in that area, well, as far back as we know, were people from the Middle East. They were from places like what we now call Syria, Israel, Palestine, and they settled there before the Celts did. Now, the ancient Britons were Celts, really, and they were in the whole of the country, but gradually over the centuries, sort of 1500 plus years ago, they got pushed further and further back into these sort of barren areas where there's not good farming. Like Cornwall's not great for farming, and Wales is the same, a bit above it. And see, Cornwall and Wales, they've got more in common with Ireland than they have with England in many ways. And opposite, that's Brittany. That's another, that's like Little Britain, really. So that's where the Celts went across the sea and settled in France. So, but the thing about Cornwall is it's totally different. People don't look, if you ask them, are you English? They laugh at you or smack you, They're not English, they don't want to be English. And that tiny place, it's about 90 miles from end to end, has had people don't realise it, it's had a huge impact on the world, because that's where the initial steam power thing came from Cornwall and also from the north of England, because they needed steam for the tin mines. They needed it to pump out the water and the oil and whatever. And those people went all over the world, including America. There's lots of Cornish communities in America. There's actually about 6 or 7 I know of. Grass Valley in California. What's it called? Mineral Point. Yeah, lovely place in Wisconsin. They're just the 2 we've been to, where they fly Cornish flags and everything. They look upon themselves as Cornish boys. Everyone knows about the Irish. You talk about the Irish, everyone knows the Irish, and they're very sort of upfront with their Irishness. But the Cornish are a bit quieter, and they just get on with it and don't brag about it, really, I suppose. So let's have a look. So the thing about Cornwall as well is for the last 200 plus years, it's attracted artists of all types. You've got musicians, writers, sculptors, painters, poets. Some of the most famous creative people you'll have ever heard of have spent some time in Cornwall, or most of them weren't born there. They sort of get pulled in, and where I live, that very end of it, there's this amazing light quality, which is caused, I think, by the sea being so close and the sun bouncing off it. So that's why people, these great artists like Olsen and I'm thinking of Patrick Heron, all of these people are drawn by the quality of the light. It's like an area of dark and light. You've got it's a very sort of touristy type area, but it's also got this dark side, and it's full of folklore. We've got our own folklore figures. We've got Spriggans, which literally was said to live around the very end bit where I live, up on those high hills with the granite. And we've got Knockers, which sort of frequented the mines, the tin mines, and that was exported to America. It became Tommy Knockers. They went with the miners. Probably, that's quite interesting. I did that in my book, but they didn't just take the custom with them, or maybe they did. But my feeling is that there's some sort of cloud, if you like. If you imagine like a computerized cloud and you can upload your stuff. I think that possibly genetic groups have their own sort of micro cloud, if you like. I can't prove that, but that's just my opinion. And so a lot of these knockers, we call Tommy Knockers in America, and lots of people have seen them. But again, those sort of creatures are in Ireland as well. They're in Scotland, they're in the southeast of England, in the mines there. There's a few mines there not many people know about. And they have different names, they're called like brownies and leprechauns and whatever. But ours are, as I say, Spriggans. We've got Piskies, of course, and Knockers, they're the main ones. And there's also legends of giants throwing these huge granite lumps at each other and so on, And weirdly enough, there are places, if you study the maps, there are places like Giant's Grave and all this sort of stuff. And the more, I used to think it was preposterous that there'd be giants. But when you study the Bible and stuff like that, not what I do, but I've seen bits and pieces, and I know people who are far more intelligent than me who believe that actually were giants, and they did live in Cornwall before regular, what do we call ourselves, Homo sapiens appeared, So, where are we? Let's just fast forward. Hope I can get through all this. So this is a lovely guy who became, when I was younger, I used to read all his books on the supernatural, as I mentioned earlier. And one of the guys who wrote a lot of books was this guy. His name's Michael Williams. And he wrote, they all sort of had similar titles, like Supernatural in Cornwall, Paranormal in Cornwall. You know, it was like deviations on the same title, really, but they were interesting books. And I had probably 20 of his books. And eventually, when I moved to Cornwall, I didn't know this, but he lived on the edge of Bodmin Moor, which is, if you've heard of Jamaica Inn, like Daphne du Maurier's Jamaica Inn, he lived on the edge of that moor. And I went to interview him when I started writing my Cornish book. And he was just like this really old-fashioned English gentleman. I mean, like, there's probably very few like him left now. And he died in February. And he gave me a lot of his experiences. He'd been studying this stuff since the mid-60s. He's got a paranormal group, which I'm a member of. But shortly after the interview, and it was my first ever interview, and I was hopeless, but he gave me lots of information. He sent me a letter and he invited me to join his paranormal group. And I was in that for about 3 years, I suppose, before he actually died this year. He was 86. So it was really weird how one of my, literary heroes, I suppose, became a friend, and he was my writing mentor as well. Actually, a funny thing happened. I was sort of sending him, just before I finished my Cornish book, I was sending him little snippets of my book and saying, what do you think, sort of thing. He was probably fed up with it. And on one of them, I had paragraphs, naturally, but for some reason, the way it was put out, formatted, they'd all merged. So he received this sort of 6-page missive, and he read it all, and he sent me back he was very strict as well. So he wouldn't tell you it was good if it wasn't. And he said, well, I quite like your contents, Mark, he said, but for God's sake, put some bloody paragraphs in it. So, and I had to explain to him, but yeah, they were there. Okay, so where am I? Okay, so this is, I don't know how much time have I got, but half an hour?
22 minutes.
How much?
22 minutes.
Thank you. Right, let's go up a gear then. So that's called the night. I think it's the Merry Maidens. That's in that Penrith area, right? The far end of Cornwall again, where I live, near where I live. And there's quite a few stone circles like that around Cornwall. Again, it has similarities to Ireland. They got lots of their own, So smoke, fire, and alchemy was a reason for that. So let's just move forward here. So. Okay. So that's basically saying what I said earlier. So it has an atmosphere. This place has it's difficult to put over. So can you hear me when I walk away from it? So it's got this sort of weird sort of feel to it. Like when you climb the hills, they're granite hills. I don't know if you can see it, but there's actually a road that follows those hills around. It's the most amazing journey. If you ever go to England, forget London, forget Manchester, go to Cornwall, because that's that's the best place. That should say Rose Wall, and somehow my presentation got messed up, so that's like 2 hours on here. The stacks are mine stacks, they're tin mine air stacks, ventilation things. The rocks on the top, that is the top of Rose Wall Hill, where right at the beginning you saw a picture of me with a stupid woolly hat on. I was in front of those rocks, and you can sort of lay up there and look at the sea both sides. And it looks like a sleeping camel. You can't really see it on that picture. It looks like a sleeping camel. So let's just fast forward. Okay. So, okay. Right, okay. So this is just a tiny snippet, this whole piece of something I started reading up on because I was fascinated by it. Because as you can probably tell, I'm quite interested in the whole the fictional aspect as well as the real stuff. I like both. And there's like a relationship between them, and possibly with the granite sort of inspires people. It pulls them down to Cornwall, and so many famous people have lived. Now that is a tiny, tiny hamlet, and it's had so many famous artists and writers there. It's just literally like a little church, a lovely little pub, and you know, you blink and you miss it. There's not much there. All the roads look like that, you know, just tiny roads. And D.H. Lawrence, who did Lady Chatterley's Lover and Sons and Lovers, and I can't remember more. He lived in that village, and he was involved in sort of magical activities. They were all into all this magic stuff, and they used to strip naked and go into the old mine shafts and call in, you know, whatever, conjuring up whatever they were. And so there's a lot of that. It's always been in Cornwall. There's always been this sort of, it's like the old religion, as they call it, you know. It's like before the Christians, all the saints came in about the 5th and 6th century. Most of them came from Ireland, actually, and France. And Cornwall had been pagan, basically. They were like a, what's the word, polytheistic society, so they had many gods. But it's never been, you know, the church, as big as they are in England, you know, but not as big as they used to be, they've never been able to stop that. They just can't. It's always going to be there. And it sort of went underground for a few centuries, and it's now sort of more out there. You know, people have little businesses and stuff, and it's very respectable now. And England's very different to America in that respect. We don't have that. The whole church-going thing sort of died out in the 50s and 60s. There's not much of it there really now. So where can I go with that now? So as if you've been reading ahead there. So D.H. Lawrence had this thing with all these people, and all these sort of creative, gifted creative people would dabble in all this stuff. And it was rampant in that area. And then about 20 years later, Aleister Crowley got involved. It started off as a rumour. I mean, I heard the rumour, and I started looking into it. And I had read a book. Let's see if we just go forward a bit. So the guy on the left, Dennis Bell Baker, he's a Celt. He doesn't come from Cornwall, but he lived in Cornwall for many years before he died. And I used to read his stuff. My mum used to read all of his stuff. He was a prolific author, you know, he wrote so much stuff. And it was mostly based on his family living in Cornwall and all his adventures, you know. And I used to try and sort of read some of my mum's books. I was always reading everything. And she would not let me get hold of certain books because, and I said, well, why not? And she'd say, well, they're a bit racy. You know, this is when I was about 12, I suppose. And I don't know if you know, racy just means like sexy and stuff. And she didn't want me, her little boy, to know this stuff, you know. So I mean, all it did was encourage me to look for the racy bits, really, you know. So, but I never really found it, you know. Very disappointing. But I did find this book called The Sacrifice. Well, it's just a short story, and I've read it dozens of times, and it's just amazing because, like it says there, like that's what me just trying to put it in words. So people like him, and there's a few of them, but he was probably the best. They're like verbal wizards casting their magic spells over their typewriters. And you could almost feel the flames and the heat, and you could hear the screaming, and because they used to do sacrifices on places like, that's my daughter, they used to do sacrifices on those granite rocks. Well, that's for rumours. A lot of babies, there was a lot of infanticide, a lot of babies went missing, and young women went missing quite a lot. And even to this day, there are rumours, but, you know, that this sort of thing still goes on. And I used to have this hunch, but he knew more than he was letting on. So it was like he was putting it out there as fiction, but I just had this feeling that there might be a bit of truth in it, and he might know some of these people. And I thought I was onto something. I thought, oh, this is fascinating. But the more I dug into it, I realised that a guy called Paul Newman, not that one, but he'd already got into it and fascinating book he wrote. It's called The Tregurthan Horror, which is what I'm sort of going to touch upon now, really, which involved Crowley. I never know, is it Crowley or Crowley? I never remember. Crowley, is it? Crowley. So initially there's just this rumour that Crowley had been in Cornwall, and if you ask people, a lot of people say, no, it's not true, there's nothing in it, you know, and, oh, he came down here for a holiday. But the more you dig into it, the more you realise he was there for, well, he'd been there after the First World War. He'd been involved on the peripheries of the D.H. Lawrence magic and, you know, all that sort of stuff. He was involved in all that. And then it sort of carried on after that anyway. So, I'm losing touch with where I am. So basically I had this idea that these fictional writers, because he sort of did autobiography stuff as well, but he based his works on real events that he'd heard about, on rumours basically, because these rumours were rampant. But you have to offset that against the fact that in the 50s, he was operating in the 50s, 60s and 70s mostly. In those times in Cornwall was a little bit backward compared to the rest of England in terms of it was still very, no offence to church people, but it was still very churchy. So their spin on all this all this spin on the magic thing and witchcraft generally was like, you know, bad, don't go there, you know. So because they were coming at it from the way they'd been raised. They'd been raised in church. The education system was still pushing the church assemblies and all this sort of stuff. So you have to sort of look at it in the context of the times that he was writing and he was getting his information. So it was all talk about demons and stuff, whereas the whole demon thing to me is, it's a certain spin that's put on it by, you know, it's like a default position. And it's just a use of language to describe something, you know, that is something else really, I don't know. So as I say, I thought I was onto something, thinking, well, maybe that's where he got all his ideas. And then this guy, Paul Newman, who had been there. So I'm sort of putting together, and I'd sort of come up with a few other ideas. Sort of, I think I've gone a little bit deeper into it than he did, so I've read most of his stuff and come up with a few other ideas. But, you know, it's sort of, like he said, it's impossible to live here in Cornwall and not be touched by the atmosphere of the place. It's a land of mystery drenched in mythology, you know. So, okay. So this is another writer. He's not connected to the last guy. He was a church organist in that church that you just saw. And he actually created the first tulpa, possibly, because back in 1943, I think it was, he wrote a book called Miss Hargreaves, which was basically about two guys who invented this old lady in their heads, and they sort of created this character. And then they started seeing her everywhere they went. This Miss Hargreaves was there, you know, and she became real, and she knew them, she knew who they were. Now, he was involved as well with all this magical stuff, this witchcraft, and that. He sort of dabbled in it. He was excited by it, but he was a Christian guy, so he was sort of living on the edge, you know. I think he was just excited by it all, really. Okay. So just a couple of little things there. So on the left, that's the churchyard at Zena, looking up at Zena Hill, where a lot of activity went on in the old days on top of the granite on top there. Zena Quoit. That's a collapsed burial chamber. So that flat piece that's on the left, that used to be like a lid on like a tomb. And there's loads of them. Everywhere you look, you find them, you know. And the farmers actually moved a lot of these things before there was protection for them. So you'll find these sort of things and old crosses in the hedgerows, you know, and still find those sort of things. So let's have a look. Time. So 1938. So Crowley. Did we say Crowley or Crowley's? Somebody told me. Sorry? Crowley. So Crowley had been down there in about 1819 after the First World War, and he was backwards and forwards a little bit, but he was known to be there in 1938, and he had all these sort of London-based sort of I mean, a lot of you guys might know more about Crowley than I do, but I'm more interested in his connection to Cornwall than his actual activities, really. It's just quite fascinating because I know the places. So he basically, this is just like a collection of rumours, the sort of thing that people at the time, getting back to what I said about the attitudes of the time, it was just like there were rumours everywhere. I mean, you literally couldn't put your washing out without somebody about 5 miles away knowing what colour your pants were, you know. It's a small community where they all know each other's business. So I used to be very doubtful about all this stuff because I thought, well, if it went on, everyone would know about it. But these rumours never stopped, and they still go on. So, as it says there, you know, perform black magic rites on the rocks and revive druidic human sacrifice cults, kidnapping women. So that lady there, I can't pronounce that. I think it's Ifel Colhoun. She was an amazing person. She was very, very, what do they call them? Polymath, I think they call them. She was so good at so many things. And that's just her talking about this stuff, you know, so there we go. That's her on the right there. Like it says, writer, artist, animist, just, you know, I believe she's an animist, magician and so on. There were other things there, but we're trying to get it on one page. So there you go. This is the sort of thing. That's another stone circle, Tregesil, where they had these ceremonies where they sort of like dance naked around them on moonlit nights and so on, allegedly. So there was this big thing with Crowley where he was alleged to have been involved in this sort of murder mystery. So in Zena, where that church was in the little pub, just outside on these wild moorlands, which I'll show you some pictures in a minute, I'll show you some pictures of the actual house. There were like two sort of cottages. One was, and they're still there to this day. One's a wreck, which is what the Crowley house, and the other one is still a beautiful house, and they're very close. Okay, so the cairn is basically the top of a hill. It's just like a collection of granite slab stones, you know, and they call it the cairn, and they've always done these sort of pagan rites on certain nights of the year on the top of these hills. Now, Frank Baker, the guy I showed you earlier, the church organist, he is the one in the middle. He wrote Talk of the Devil, Night at Cairn, A.L. Rouse, he was a Cornishman, and this is that guy, Dennis Bell Baker. Now, the two on the left were written about this specific murder mystery involving Crowley. And the one on but they were written as fiction. They changed the location slightly, they changed the names. And the one on the right was just written up as if it was fact, which I think, on balance, having looked at it all, I think it probably was fact. And I'll get to that one. So, okay, so there you have, on the left, that's where Crowley, now he didn't actually live there. There was a couple there called the Vaughans. It was, Gerald and Ellaline Vaughan lived in that place back in the 30s. They were dabbling in all this black magic, and they knew Crowley because Crowley was like a celebrity in sort of creative circles down there, and they used to let him use that property because it was near the top of the hill where, in fact, you can see it in the second picture actually. You can see the top of the hill. So they used to, you can see the sea at the back, that blue, that's how close it is to the sea. And he was in the habit of going there regularly, doing these conjurations, whatever they do. And just along, very close to that, hopefully I've got a picture.
5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Yeah.
Oh, God, right. I got a bit rushed. So, okay, see the picture on the left? That's the house to the right is right at the edge of the road, and it's on an outcrop of rock, and it's called the Eagle's Nest because of its position. It's like an eyrie. The house to the left of it didn't exist then, but the other house I just showed you, where Crowley was a little bit, well, actually, I'm trying to think now. Yeah, a bit lower down the hill. That's just the coastline nearby. The guy in the middle this is important. He is Will Arnold, Forster, Royal Navy, retired. He'd been in the First World War, and he was sort of semi-retired in his early 50s, and that's his wife, Catherine. And Catherine had a bit of a falling out with Crowley. She knew what he was up to, and she didn't like it. So there was like this antagonism between the two of them. They didn't like each other. And Will was away in America at the time on business. And they were very involved in sort of, well, he was in the League of Nations. He was very much a left-wing sort of guy of his day who was trying to push for world peace, you know, nothing wrong with that. But the establishment didn't like it because they were making money out of weapons like they still do. 10. No pressure. So on the night, what happened was Catherine on the right there, she was at home in that little house on the higher up one, and she heard screaming, and like really hysterical screaming. She looked out the window. It's at night time. There's a woman running down, which is Ellaline Bourne. She's running down the hill. She's in a terrible, terrible state. And she said there's been a terrible thing happened up at the Cairn. And so Kay said, well, I'll come up and help you. And she couldn't talk. She was like gibbering mess. So he went up to the property. Now, all we know is what we don't know. She got up there. She never came back. Catherine never came back alive. She was dead. And as I say, he wasn't there at the time. The other girl sort of recovered, I think. Her husband was a gibbering mess. They had seen something. They'd been dabbling and conjuring something. Now that's the mystery. We don't know what. Something had appeared that had scared the guy. He ended up in a mental home. And she died of a heart attack or something, right? Possibly through what she saw as well. Now, the police investigated all of that. I'm sorry to hurry along. The police investigated it all, but it was made an official secret. And the file's not going to be open until 2038 because it's very sensitive information. Now, when I dug into this, I found out that Crowley had been working for the British government in the First World War. He did lots of his work. He put out an image which wasn't the whole story. A lot of celebrities are used like this, and they still are when they're going around the world. They're spying a lot, you know. And I feel that he had something to do with possibly keeping an eye on Catherine and Will, because they were considered to be like lefties by the establishment of the day, and a danger to people's money, you know, the rich people. Basically, they needed war, you know. So, just quick forward. Okay. So I'm just trying to think if I've forgotten anything. So it's basically all hushed up. Yeah. So, fast forward to that. Okay. Sorry if you can read that horrible yellow writing. So, like I say, the literary tradition of using real life events as a raw material to create fiction still continues. You see that a lot, really. And it's all going to be in my book. I've got two books out, volume 1 and 2, A Haunted Legacy. And that is just like one tiny part of it, really. And there'll probably be more witness experiences as well, so I love all that as well. The cottage, that cottage you're looking at just underneath where it says probably not, that is the Crowley house. And it's just literally falling apart now. There used to be a little road track up to it, it's all wild now. And the whole thing about Smoke Without Fire is, you know, was this stuff going on? And, you know, could there have been all these rumours without the events? That's what I was trying to say. And I think it was all definitely real. And I think in 2038, maybe they'll let us know what really did happen. So there's the books. And unfortunately, the definition didn't come out very well, but on the books it does. The paperbacks come out in about 2 weeks. We're still trying to get the covers sorted. The Kindles are already out there. Most of it is witness experiences. Well, in those books, it's just witness experiences. And there's everything from UFOs to ghosts and all the usual, you know, it's got everything. And they're all genuine witness experiences. The third one is more like the stuff I've just been talking about. It's to do with the sort of fringes of it all, really. And yeah, I think that's about it. So anyway, I'd just like to thank Adam for inviting me down, and Surfield too. And thanks for inviting us, you know, for all you've done. And that's why I'm here today, really. So that's why you've had to put up with me. But and thanks to the audience for coming out. And I hope you understood me. I know it's hard understanding somebody from elsewhere. I have the same problem here. So are we okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Guys, Mark Anthony Wyatt, all the way from Cornwall, England. Okay. All right, there is a white SUV, Rob, correct? Parked in front of the loading dock. If someone is parked there that is in here, you'll need to move that.
He came out and got some of his stuff. I'm pretty sure it's a musician.
Okay, cool, good. Perfect. We don't know who it is, so. All right. Over here?
Yeah, you can trade me, so you can hold this?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, everybody, y'all ready to answer some questions? Yeah. We have some prizes. Oh, yeah! I like that enthusiasm. Someone gets a Slim Jim. That's going somewhere. All right, cool. All right, so yeah, we're going to do a couple things here. For starters, I brought Mo Yo Mama. So we're going to read a Mo Yo Mama joke, and then we will get into a paranormal trivia question. So, your mama's so old, the picture on her driver's license is by Leonardo da Vinci. It's Mo Yo Mama, Snapseed Pat, Kid Rang, thank you very much for that. All right. Our first paranormal trivia question. There are going to be prizes involved, so just jump up and be enthusiastic if you know the name of this or the answer to this. Question 1. Bigfoot was caught on film in 1967. What hyphenated name is the film called? All right. Yeah, that's it. There's no rules, just yell it. So, all right, come on up, get a prize. Okay, you're gonna win an awesome Paranormal T-shirt brought to you by did the art back there. Yeah, thank you very much. All right, cool. There we go, and you get a Slim Jim too. Oh yeah! All right, you up? All right.
All right, we're gonna take a little bit of a break at the next speaker set up. That's Mr. Timothy Renner. So just if you guys want to mill around or whatever, we got snacks in the back. You realize that there's little candies, so we're not going to, there is charge for $1, but just grab a whole handful. There's a lot. So if you guys want to take advantage of that, that is in the back. Shirts are in the front.
Okay.
Hope you guys enjoyed that presentation from Mark Anthony Wyatt on Cornwall and its various mysteries. So that's pretty cool. That's how we kicked it off last year.
Yes, yes. And next up, we have a presentation, the second presentation of the day, which was Timothy Renner, which he is going to show backup later on in the conference with Joshua Cutchin for a presentation about where the footprints in. But his presentation solo is the Pennsylvania Wild Man. And Surfiel is going to go ahead and pull that up for you guys. And we're going to watch that.
great and wonderful Strange Familiars podcast. You know all about Flannel Man and the man that I'm about to bring up that has collected several Flannel Man stories. He has made it his thing. So that's why we're celebrating that with flannel. Guys, I want to welcome the host of Strange Familiars podcast, great author, good friend, Mr. Timothy Ritter. Give him a good hand.
Yeah! How you doing? Hear me all right?
Yes.
I did not make flannel my thing. It was thrust upon me. My wife had a flannel man sighting and it became a thing when I talked about it. But today I'm going to be talking about this gorilla flat from 1920s in Pennsylvania. And what this is a series of so-called gorilla sightings that started in August 1920 and it continued for about a year afterwards. And this is all taken from my book, Bigfoot in Pennsylvania. I will get around to doing the whole country. I've done Pennsylvania and the West Coast. I will get around to doing different sections of the country as time allows. But it's a collection of old newspaper articles, basically from the early 1800s to 1920s, early 1920s. So these gorillas, the explanation given in the articles most often is that they're escaped circus animals. The problem with this is, so they'll say there was a train wreck and these animals escaped. Train wrecks are very well documented, and there are no train wrecks that correspond with this. Circus train wrecks.
Sorry, guys, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties on my end, so I think Adam is going to go ahead and play this. So yeah, we're about to play the Timothy Renner. Here we go.
Great and wonderful Strange Familiars podcast. You know all about Flannel Man and the man that I'm about to bring up that has collected several Flannel Man stories. He has made it his thing. So that's why we're celebrating that with flannel. Guys, I want to welcome the host of Strange Familiars podcast, great author, good friend, Mr. Timothy Ritter. Give him a good hand.
Yeah! How you doing? Hear me all right?
Yes.
I did not make flannel my thing. It was thrust upon me. My wife had a flannel man sighting and it became a thing when I talked about it. But today I'm going to be talking about this gorilla flat from 1920s in Pennsylvania. And what this is a series of so-called gorilla sightings that started in August 1920 and it continued for about a year afterwards. And this is all taken from my book, Bigfoot in Pennsylvania. I will get around to doing the whole country. I've done Pennsylvania and the West Coast. I will get around to doing different sections of the country as time allows. But it's a collection of old newspaper articles, basically from the early 1800s to 1920s, early 1920s.
So these gorillas, the explanation given in the articles most often is that they're escaped circus animals. The problem with this is, so they'll say there was a train wreck and these animals escaped. Train wrecks are very well documented, and there are no train wrecks that correspond with this. Circus train wrecks were especially well documented. They were news. It was big news. There are no circus train wrecks in Pennsylvania at this time. We know this now. At the time, they were just guessing. They were just trying to figure out why are there gorillas suddenly in Pennsylvania. Gorillas in that time, they were all accounted for. They were very, very expensive. There were not many in the U.S. at that time. I'm talking the early 1920s. I think Barnum had one, and I think the New York Zoo had one. I think that was it. They were super expensive. Something like what would be $1 million in today's money it would cost for a gorilla. So they did go missing sometimes, these animals, not gorillas so much, but chimpanzees and stuff would go missing, and they always hunted them down. They didn't just let them go. They always got them back because it was an investment for these carnivals and so forth. The gorillas were reported in the newspaper. If you look at these old newspaper articles, they all knew their name and they were reported on like celebrities. They said like, you know, this gorilla, Jimbo or whatever his name was, he smoked cigars and, you know, wrestled with a bulldog or something. You know, they have all these articles. They're reported on like celebrities. So they didn't just forget that these things existed and, you know, oh, it ran off. Okay, whatever. No more gorilla, I guess. And the other thing is that gorillas are very difficult to care for. And they did not live long when they brought them here. So we know a lot better how to care for them now as zookeepers and so forth. But at the time, they didn't know. So they would die. These gorillas would die with great frequency. Now, gorillas are tropical animals, and we're talking about Pennsylvania, and these sightings go through a very cold winter. So it's very, very unlikely they'd go to feed themselves in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania winters, of course, are very cold. They would not survive long there. And another thing we're talking about is more than one creature. Because the reports talk about these things being anywhere from 5 feet to 8 feet in height. So it has to be more than one creature. So now we're talking about more than one gorilla that's supposed to escape, that's unaccounted for. It just seems like whatever they were seeing was not a gorilla. And the tallest mountain gorilla ever recorded was about 6.5 feet tall. So when they're talking about 7 and 8 foot creatures, again, that's out of the realm of mountain gorillas. It's important to note that Bigfoot and Sasquatch, these terms were not used at the time. Bigfoot was coined in the 1950s and didn't really become popular as far as like used in pop culture and known until the 1970s. Sasquatch is pretty much the same. It was used earlier, but it really didn't become a known term until much later. So they didn't have things to call these big hairy things that they saw. And you see these in newspapers all across the country. In the 1800s, they tended to call them wild man because it's something upright and crazy, wild looking. And so they say, oh, it's a wild man. It's a wild man in the woods. And then as the late 1800s come, people start seeing pictures of gorillas in newspapers, and maybe they did get a chance to see a gorilla or something like it in a traveling show or a circus or something. So now they have something else to call these, what they're seeing, and now they start calling them gorillas. So the gorilla sightings start coming around 1900 and into the 30s, 40s, and then you get a lot of monster reports. All of a sudden it changes. Once the monster movies come in, people start calling these things monsters. We saw a monster. So it follows the culture in that way. So we're going to be talking about Pennsylvania, and I'll show you the sightings as we go through the map here, or where the sightings happen on the map as we go through. So the so-called gorilla flat starts in August of 1920 in Mifflin Township, and that's southeast of Pittsburgh. And it was claimed that livestock was going missing, and a creature was said to be terrorizing women and children. And the residents believe, these are all, by the way, the actual headlines I take from the paper. So the residents believe the creature was living in a mine, they did take guns and lanterns, and they attempted to enter the mine. One man was brave enough to go inside, and he returned with the remains of an animal that was thought to be a sheep. And of course, they assumed the creature, whatever it was, had been eating that or had killed it. And then it was next accused of milking cows. It's a funny thing, but it's not the first time Bigfoot has been reported milking cows. Not even in Pennsylvania. I have a report from Lancaster County in the 1800s where they said a creature was milking cows. They called it the hairy man, I believe, at that time. So on August 21st of 1920, residents entered a mine. They supposedly saw the creature enter the mine. They followed in after it. And it is often the case with Bigfoot. They found nothing, even though they saw it after it went in, they followed it in. And they said, it must have disappeared into some unknown recess of the mine. And then around the same time, on September 10th, 1920, 4 armed men were raccoon hunting in the same area, and they were badly frightened by the gorilla. They had stopped by someone's house and kind of recover, they were saying, from being frightened so badly. So it next turns up in Cannonsburg, Pennsylvania. That's about 20 miles southwest of Pittsburgh. And you'll notice an ongoing theme. It was said to be in another mine. So caves and mines and Bigfoot sightings, they always go hand in hand for some reason. And this is a newspaper illustration from the time. And you'll notice it doesn't look much like a mountain gorilla. It looks more like our modern conception of Bigfoot. I thought that was very interesting. The next gorilla sighting pops up in Snyder County, December 1920. And Snyder County is in the middle of the state. It's about 20 to 30 miles north of Harrisburg, the capital, and 20 to 30 miles east of State College, if you're familiar with the State College football team, Penn State. And the following article is from the Altoona Tribune, December 15th, 1920. This is one of my favorite Bigfoot encounters of all time. Giant gorilla creates fear in Snyder County. Animal believed to have escaped from carnival breaks boy's arm during attack, had previously been wounded. Visits Bowling Farm quite often. The appearance of a man-ape or gorilla in the mountains of Snyder County has caused great excitement among residents of the section where the animal was seen. The big ape was first seen 3 weeks ago by Samuel Bowling of Miser, a small town in Snyder County. The animal is supposed to be one that escaped some time ago from a carnival, and which has since been living in the mountains of that section of the state. Samuel and Margaret Bowling, the children of Charles Bowling, were gathering kindling wood one night in November when in the light of a search lamp, when a huge animal about 7 feet tall and that stood up like a man was discovered by the children within the circle of light. It looked to them like a huge monkey, and when discovered, dropped on all fours and ambled away, soon disappearing in the darkness. A week later, the same animal was discovered in a cornfield on the Bowling farm, which is at the foot of the mountain. Samuel procured a .32 caliber rifle and took a shot at the huge man creature, evidently wounding it as it fell at the shot, rolling over several times on the ground. The boy and his father trailed the wounded ape some distance by the blood, but were unable to overtake it, and at length gave up the pursuit. On Monday night of the present week, the strange creature made its third appearance at the Bowling farm. Charles Bowling was engaged in chopping wood by the light of a lantern when the ape approached near enough to be seen. The son ran to the house and procured the rifle, but before he could shoot the gorilla, it viciously attacked him, knocking him down and breaking his arm, and was finally driven away by the father. The lad lay on the ground in an unconscious condition. He was taken to the house and soon after recovered his senses, and it was found that he was not seriously injured. He suffered much from shock, but is expected to be fully recovered in a short time. A large number of men armed with rifles started out to hunt the animal. About 100 Lewistown hunters were scouring the narrows and surrounding country toward the Snyder County line, in the hope of getting a shot at the huge creature and killing it. As its presence has caused the greatest consternation in that section, the gorilla being a very dangerous animal on account of its great size, strength, and savage nature. So that article demonstrates this kind of behavior, and that's one of the things that have convinced me that these old articles are talking about Bigfoot more than even the descriptions of something big and hairy, because maybe something big and hairy is in our subconscious and we'll always have hairy monsters. But these sort of behaviors of the creature that modern witnesses report, and I know they weren't reading these articles because I had to dig very hard to find them, they've reported this bipedal to quadrupedal locomotion, which a lot of people think, well, that cancels out. Bigfoot walks on 2 feet. Not really. You get a lot of reports of them dropping down on all fours and running. It is shot but not killed. Bulletproof Bigfoot is a thing. Josh and I will talk about that later. This happens again and again. People shoot creatures and they do not kill them. There'll be another report that I'll talk about at the end of this. It happens again. The creatures seem to recognize guns. Again, this happens in modern reports all the time. Everything seems to be okay until the hunter points his gun at it, and then the creature goes berserk. And then they have what I term to be a kind of revenge culture, the creatures. And if you take a shot at them and they get a chance to follow you home, they will follow you home and harass you. But notice, again, it's according to many modern reports where people have done the same thing. They've either shot at them or done something, and they've gone home and they've experienced wall slaps or other harassment, or their pets get killed, or so forth. So this is a pattern of behavior amongst the creatures that's consistent in these old articles that I see nowadays as well, which I find very, very interesting. So a few days later, after the bowling attack, the same creature or another gorilla, so-called gorilla, attacked an automobile in Selinsburg, Snyder County. We're still in Snyder County. So the creature leapt upon the car, and they said the driver fought it off with a penknife, aided by another driver. So that's a brave guy, like a gorilla or a Bigfoot with a penknife. So the same day, and again, this makes me think we're talking about more than one creature, because the same day, several counties over, in Blair County, there's another gorilla sighting. And a farmer saw it near his house, and he reported meat robbed from his smokehouse. Another man saw it the same day along the roadside and was badly frightened. One day later, in Hollidaysburg, Blair County, a ape man was seen, what they termed an ape man, trying to get into a chicken coop. Very same day, some motors passed what they call a gorilla at Kralskis, and that's just west of Hollidaysburg. They described the creature as being between 6 and 7 feet tall, brown in color, and they said it emitted a horrible yell as the motors passed. So a catalog of sightings and other encounters from the Hollidaysburg area was then given in the Altoona Tribune. So several chicken coops were reportedly raided at Manning Farm. 15 chickens were killed and eaten. They found an impression in the hay where the creature was thought to have slept. They found footprints near Brush Run, where another chicken coop was raided. Railroad workers heard cries coming from across the Juniata River. They described it as a child in distress magnified 1,000-fold, combined with Dante's description of the wail of the lost soul. Quite poetic. And an old man who heard it, they said, I believe they said he was an octogenarian, and he had heard every animal in Pennsylvania. And he described the sound as Satan unchained and abroad. So, people were seeming more poetic back then. So the same day, this is December 21st, 1920, a large ape was spotted in Claysburg. This is about 10 miles south of Hollidaysburg. Multiple tracks in the snow were found. They were about 12 inches long and wide in proportion. A hunting party of 30 men searched for the creature, and as usual, they found nothing. So back in Snyder County, near Middleburg, the creature tried to attack another automobile. And they said this was a huge animal, 7 feet tall, with arms and legs like telephone poles. It It jumped at the car, missed, it fell sprawling into the road. The driver fired 2 shots at it, but he either missed or the shots had no effect. And this is about 4 miles from the Bolig farm, where Samuel Bolig was attacked at under flag red before. So on December 27th, 1920, in Dry Gap, Muskegon County, south of Snyder County, a man encountered an 8 near a water reservoir. Okay, that's it. You go, okay. So that's now the papers have been reporting. So they're saying Dry Gap man is certain as a, what that refers to is they have been reporting that they even knew back then that there had been a cold snap, and they knew that a gorilla was a tropical animal that couldn't rot, and they were sure that the gorilla was dead. And the papers report, oh, the gorilla must be dead. We had this cold snap. There's no way it could live. So even back in the 20s, they realized that. But then this guy, after this cold snap, he sees it, and it was at a water reservoir. It was about twilight. He said he heard a strange barking sound coming from the woods. He said it made his blood run cold. He started running away when the barking changed to a roar. Looking back, the animal emerged from the trees. He saw a creature with a hairy face, a practically bare chest, immensely long arms, broad shoulders, and comparatively short legs. So in January 1921, the gorilla started showing up in south central Pennsylvania, which is my hunting ground. And these sightings were recorded around, all around the town of Shippensburg. So the towns of Roxbury, Newburgh, Middle Spring, Orrstown, and West End, they were all recorded in the same article. So Shippensburg, for reference, is about 15 to 20 miles northwest of Gettysburg, and the 2 towns are separated by the Michoud State Forest, which is one of your top 10 places in the country to see Bigfoot today. So around January 13th, 1921, a gorilla was said to have attacked and eaten a calf in Williston, that's east of Shippensburg. 50 men went to round up the creature. That's Williston. One named Jim Banton, he's a superintendent at the local brickyard. He came upon the creature, it picked up a club and chased him a half a mile before knocking him to the ground, hitting him twice with the club. He was hospitalized. I like finding these old guys, these old Bigfoot witnesses. I found, I have not tracked down Jim Banton yet, but some of these other ones I've actually found their graves and stuff, and just confirmed that they were real people. So on January 19th, 1921, a creature was seen stretched on a rock at Mount Rock that's south of Shippensburg. It was described as monstrous. January 20th, 1921, several men chased what was called a huge gorilla around Idaville. And that's about 10 miles north of Gettysburg. It was next seen by hunters, another gorilla. So a gorilla was next seen by hunters in Adams County around January 27th. On the same day, a gorilla, they said about the size of a man, was seen in Waynesboro. That night, the same night, the creature was seen in an alley in Rouserville, which is a town just east of Waynesboro. A large group of hunters chased the animal into the mountains. They again fired several shots at it with no effect. They formed a circle around the area. They saw the creature going to the area, and they literally formed a circle, all the hunters around it, and they closed in on it gradually. And when they closed the circle, they found nothing. While they were doing this, the creature appeared back in town and was frightening the residents because all the guys with guns were out hunting for it, and it appeared back in town and caused quite a stir. The same or another creature was seen on a golf course in Monterey, which is a couple miles east of Rouserville. 2 men saw what they thought to be a man crawling on all fours. They called to it. It stood up on 2 legs and approached them, making gurgling sounds, which is again another modern thing here. A lot of these strange sounds. On January 29th, 1921, John Simmons, to the east of Rouserville, saw what he called a big ape in bright daylight. He was 100% sure what he saw. And again, all of these people can't be crazy, all of them can't be wrong. There's just way too many sightings. So I don't find anything else on the creatures from January to August. And I get a report from Gettysburg on August 9th, 1921. Town residents see gorilla, strange beast shot at by York Street citizen, found footprints too. It's in again. After having passed out of the limelight several months ago, the well-known gorilla is back. It was in Gettysburg several nights ago, according to information from well-informed circles. It was not only seen at, but shot. Whether or not it was wounded is not known, but it departed hurriedly from Lower York Street in the direction of Bigelowville. Not long ago, a woman residing on York Street saw a strange object about 4 feet in height moving along the fence in the rear of her house, it is said. And being alone, she rushed to the place next door seeking help. The man of the house secured a shotgun. He too saw the beast. He fired. The gorilla dropped to the ground. Thinking he had bagged his game, the gunner went toward the fallen animal. When only a few feet away, the beast jumped to its hind legs and chased the man into the house, residents of that part of town declare. Those who ventured to look out say the animal disappeared in the direction of Bigelowville. In fact, they declare an examination of the ground in the field nearby revealed footprints of a strange beast. A number of York Street residents have oiled shotguns long obscured, and a second visit by the beast to that part of town would probably result fatally for it. Others believe the animal by this time has returned to the fastness of the mountains. So once we have a creature that is shot and not killed, which happens again and again. You shoot them, but you can't kill. There are people who have claimed to kill them, by the way, but they never produce the bodies. On August 12, 1921, a gorilla was seen sitting on a stump near Fort Loudon. This is about 20 to 30 miles west of Gettysburg. And there were 4 witnesses in the automobile. They all saw it. On August 21st, 1921, in Fairfield, that's west of Gettysburg, a man saw a 5-foot-tall, hair-covered gorilla cross the road in front of him while he was riding his horse. He crossed the road and hopped over a fence. Didn't even look at him. Didn't even pay attention to him. So this was the last report of the 1920s gorilla flat in Pennsylvania. However, October 1921, a gorilla shows up in northern Maryland. So, was it the same thing? Was it a group of creatures? Were they moving through the state? Did they go south? I do not know. I have found actually other gorilla sightings south of Pennsylvania into 1921 and 22. So, it's difficult for me to think of these things as natural creatures anymore. I don't know what they are. I know they're very, very strange, but maybe they were moving through the state. So that's all the sightings. That's not every sighting, and those are just approximate locations, but that's quite a lot of sightings. And as I said, everybody can't be wrong. Everybody can't be making them up. Everybody can't be mistaken about what they saw. These were people who knew what creatures were out there. They knew the difference between a bear and something that walks upright, with broad shoulders. Some of the newspaper reports got really silly. They said that somebody caught a big raccoon in a trap, and that explains it. Oh, that's it. That solves it. It was this big raccoon. And then, of course, after every one of these so-called explanations, there'd be more reports of gorillas in the paper. So that's the Pennsylvania Gorilla Flat, 1920-21. If you have any questions, I guess we'll be doing questions later in the day. My books are back there. I've written 4 books, two specifically on Bigfoot and two on some other strange things. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions? Because we are actually ahead of time. So if anybody has any questions for Mr. Renner, please go ahead.
What's the geology where those sightings, is it,
I'm sorry?
what's the geology where those, most of the sightings are? Is it like granite or limestone?
We have granite, we have quartz, a lot of quartz. There's a vein of quartz that runs through Pennsylvania. About like this.
Right where the sightings are.
So I've wondered if that plays a part. It's a big vein of white quartz that runs through there. I don't know. I don't have any like hard answers. It's people often ask me, well, what are they? What are they? I don't know. I can only tell you if they're natural animals, they're weirder than any other animal that exists because it's very, very strange. Yeah,
I'm guessing you must know Stan Gordon.
I do know Stan.
Okay, I know that I've been corresponding with him since the '60s, and I visited him in '75. It was right after he had a wave of sightings he was investigating in '72 and '73. He said it was one of the most massive waves that he knew of at the time. And back when I went to see him at his home in '75, I stopped at the police station to get directions, and they told me. Gave me directions, then told me not to call him if there was a Bigfoot. But anyway, I just wondered, and he thought there was a correlation with UFO activity in the area. Have you ever noticed anything like that?
In modern reports, absolutely. I often say, and I say this jokingly, it's only half jokingly, that if you find me a Bigfoot report in Pennsylvania, I'll find you a UFO report nearby within a few days, if not at the same time. I've been looking for reports of strange things in the sky to correspond with these, and I've just not turned it up yet. Now, have I not found them? That's the thing. You have to look for. They weren't making those connections back then, so you have to look for. What did they call UFOs back then? This is kind of after airships and before the first wave of UFOs. So it's kind of hard to look for. Strange lights in the skies is a difficult search term, So, but I am looking for them. I would not be surprised to find that there were at the time.
Besides the lights in the sky, what about lights on the ground in these areas? Is that a really common thing in this part of the around these sighting clusters?
As far as like will-o-the-wisp lights and so forth. Again, it's not mentioned in these old articles, but I would have to guess that yes, they're there. I mean, and they probably were there because they accompany modern sightings so much. Yeah.
Just because you said you don't believe it's natural animals and anybody's guess, go ahead and take a second, speculate. What are your wildest theories about paranormal or alien or whatever? What's the extreme of what you've had to think about or rule out, or what's your gut on? What is the answer?
I like to remain very agnostic, and I know that's the least sexy. That's the least sexy answer. I believe that whatever these are the same things that we were talking about in folklore hundreds and hundreds of years ago. We called them wild men back then. They've always lived next to us in the woods. They've always been there, and in every culture, everywhere has a wild man. I think it changes the way that UFOs have changed. I think that if you look at UFOs, the earliest airship sightings, they were like blimps and stuff with weird lights, and they get into the 50s, they start turning into these Art Deco, saucer machines, and then you get into the 70s, and you start getting the black triangles and the more sci-fi things, and nowadays it's like plasma balls and stuff like that. It changes culturally. I think the wild man changes culturally too. A lot of these reports, these wild man reports I got from the 1800s, it'll be a hair-covered big thing, but it'll also be wearing a beat-up flannel shirt and carrying a rusty musket and things like that. And when I first got into it, I was sure they were just creatures. So those reports I was just discounting. I was like, that's wrong. The reporter must have added that. And then, that's not really fair to do, because if you're going to take witness testimony that they saw a big hairy thing in the woods, you also have to say, take it at value when they say, well, it was carrying a rusty musket too. We can't say, well, it couldn't have been carrying the musket, but they did see a big hairy thing. No, you have to take it what they say. So I think the wild man archetype has changed, and I think it's gotten wilder. The further we get away, and this is just a working theory I have, but I feel like the further we get away from nature, the wilder our wild man archetype is. So now we have this Sasquatch, it's very, very wild now, and whereas before we had this more of a wild man, just a kind of wilder version of us that was out there. So I think whatever we were talking about in folklore, by we, I mean all cultures everywhere. I do a lot more with the European heritage than I do with the Native American, just because it's been documented more. It's just a lot easier to find and easier to get people to talk about. Very difficult to get First Nations people to talk about this stuff. But it is there. It's in the First Nations stuff too. And curiously, most every culture talks about the wild man, and almost none of them say it's just a natural creature. It's always a wizard or some kind of magical thing or a witch, or it's always that. So it is, to say it's an archetype, it makes people think, oh, it's just part of your mind. I believe it can manifest physically, and does. It leaves footprints, it leaves hair. But how that process works, I don't know. I just haven't put that together. But it's connected folklorically to us, this wild man thing. I think probably it needs us in some way, and we need it, and I don't know how that works. But that's what I'm working with now. That's my wild theory of the moment. But it. All right. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Just a random thought that I had is that they're similar to humans at all, and they're just really long-lived. Humans tend to get hairier the longer they live, so they could just be really old.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting because
Get really hairy.
one of the places that really made me question it being a natural creature is the county in which I live. There's an area of condensed sightings of Bigfoot that go back to the 1800s. It's about 8 square miles. And I really, really looked at this area, and these sightings happen all time of year and all different weather. So I'm looking at all these different factors. Why are people seeing it? And if they're nomadic, they're coming through at all different times. It doesn't seem to be a pattern to it. But that made me question, how is this? There can't be a breeding population there. Not in the county I live. It's just there's not enough room for a breeding population of giant ape men. You can't have it. So one thought I had was maybe they're super long living, and people are just seeing the same one or two, and so that's a good idea. Yeah. All right, well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim. All right, we are ahead of schedule, so it is now about 10 till noon, and we're going to take a lunch break. We will be back in here 1:15, which is the next speaker, Mr. Joe Damari. He's going to show you how to find ghosts and bend your reality. So, all right, lunch break. There is stuff around. Max out there, he knows the area pretty well, sitting there. He can tell you some of the stuff that's around to eat.
Okay. That was Timothy Renner about the Pennsylvania Wildman Flap of 1921. And that was at our Strange Realities Conference 2019. If you guys are just tuning in, we are doing this to promote our Strange Realities Conference 2020, which is solely online this year.
Yep.
And we are going to be, they went to lunch, but we're not quite going to go to lunch yet. We're going to do this after this next presentation. So the next presentation is from Joe Damari, who is a good friend of mine, known him for a long time, and he has a ghost hunting technology called Ghost Pro VR. And you guys are going to watch him demonstrate this at the Strange Realities Conference 2020 in Nashville, Tennessee on October 19th, 2019. So guys, enjoy. Anything you want to say about this one, Sergio?
Oh no, this is real cool. This was something that allowed some interactivity with the audience, and it's gonna be fun. You'll feel like you were there. Check it out.
Absolutely, guys, and we are playing it now.
Okay, we're back from lunch. Welcome back, guys. Strange Realities Conference 2019. And just want to point some things out to you guys if you haven't seen already. Our authors, presenters rather, have their books. And we're going to be given a prize from either one or both of books in our little trivia. But we also have someone that's not a presenter that is back here. His name is Mr. Brent Rains. He is the editor of Alternate Perceptions magazine. And he has written an excellent book about John Keel that he is selling back there. Make sure you guys check that out. We actually on Conspiranormal just did an interview with Brent, but we haven't put it out yet. So that will be the next show that posts. So this guy over here, this mad genius, is going to bend your reality, we hope. And he's going to demonstrate his ghost hunting, ghost detecting technology for you guys called Ghost Prover. Ghost Pro VR. Okay. So guys, please welcome my good friend, Mr. Joe Damari.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to try to stay close to this microphone. Okay, I'm not used to speaking too much in front of people, so if you don't understand, raise your hand, say, what the heck did you say? All right, thanks for coming out. I'm going to show you guys how to catch ghosts, real ghosts on camera. And this is based upon research I've been doing. If you have an iPhone or an Android, you should be able to do this technology in your home or during ghost hunting or whatever. And if you want to record me talking up here and some of the pictures with your phone, feel free to do so. All right. My name is Joe Damari. I'm a computer scientist, inventor, author. I just recently published a book called Pocket Future. It deals with this technology and the intelligence behind it. Raise your hand if you're a part of a ghost hunting group. Anybody ever see a ghost in real life? Raise your hand. Anybody psychic that can make predictions in the room? Anybody has claimed to be a psychic? Okay. There's a lot of psychics out there, they don't know that they're psychic. Anybody skeptical who don't believe in ghosts at all? Raise your hand. It's okay to be a skeptic. Okay. Okay, cool. All right, this technology will amaze you. It's amazed me. I'm still freaked out every single photo I take because I'm still in shock. And I think that's why a lot of people don't get into ghost hunting, because they're just scared of what they're gonna find. And this is the kind of stuff you're gonna find if you have the right technique and the right way. This little guy on the left is a creature. I don't know his name. They don't tell me their names. They just show up. So that's part of the advancement of this technology in the future. We want to know the names of these people, or who they're affiliated with, or why they're there. We want to know all of this. So this is groundbreaking, that we can actually visually see them anytime we want. This guy on the right is about 7 or 8 foot tall. He's looking through a window. These photos are not fake. I stand by everything. This is done digitally with a computer that notices shade variations in color, and it amplifies changes in movement and light. I call this technology a skeptic killer. If you're a skeptic and you actually follow me around or follow what I'm talking about and use the technology the way it's supposed to be used, you will see ghosts all the time. So if any of you meet a skeptic, give them my name and tell them to follow what Joe's doing, because he's showing real pictures of real ghosts. This guy looks to me to be maybe a soldier, like a Chinese soldier from a long time ago. I call him Genghis Khan. My daughter came back. I asked her, did you have homework today? And she said, yeah, we were talking about the Great Wall of China and stuff. And 3 hours later, I took that picture. So I don't know if they were saying, hey, we want to be on camera too. I don't know. I don't think it's created by my mind, though, because I have something called antiphasia or something, but I can't see things with my eyes closed. I don't have an imagination. So this is why these pictures are so amazing to me, is it's showing me stuff I've never seen before. I normally see just blackness when I close my eyes. So this guy, if you can see him, is a guy leaning over with his hand over his mouth. He looks English to me. Both these spirits were caught using water mist and an intersecting light. Okay, a little history. I don't want to bore everybody, so I'm going to invite people on stage after me talking for about 20 minutes. Then the volunteers, we're going to try to catch a ghost on camera. So you guys will see a ghost in here. I'm sure there's probably hundreds of them. We just can't see them right now. Okay, a little history. I worked on a show called Ghost Asylum. Anybody hear that show? Raise your hand. I worked with a guy named Doogie. I worked behind the scenes helping them build traps to catch a ghost. On the show, we never did catch anything, and a lot of people hated that. They're like, these guys aren't any good, they're not catching anything. But the craziest thing was we were catching stuff afterwards that we would send all the footage in, and then they would make the show each week. Then we would get stuff later, and we couldn't put it in, and we were signed a non-disclosure thing, so we had a lot of evidence afterwards, and it's because of this technology. Doogie came to me one day and he said, Joe, you got to check out what MIT is doing. MIT, he said, is working on amplifying small movements in video. They said they were doing it for the medical industry. I think it may have been for the military, though, because they have the DARPA logo on their site, and it's the Advanced Research Projects Agency, and they even mentioned that they received a large sum of money to do this technology. I don't know if they were searching for ghosts, but it could have been for target acquisition. They were maybe looking for camouflage soldiers. So this stuff, if anything moves, it'll outline it. So I think it's probably used in some advanced way with the military. So I sort of took advantage of it. What person gets a hold of $16 million technology and just walks away from it? I'm like, they posted the computer code on the internet. I said, I have to look at it. So I put a ghost video, like 10 seconds of video that we shot a week earlier. And to my amazement, I could see stuff coming out of the walls and like little hands and things like that. And if you watch Ghost Asylum in the second season, you'll see their promo video of where all these arms and legs are coming out of the wall, like the ghosts are crawling out of the wall. That was inspired by stuff we were seeing. But it wasn't true, but the artist did a rendering of what we were talking about. So with the tech, we could see stuff coming out of the walls. It was crazy. So fast forward, for my ongoing private research, the OPR, I've made it faster. Back a few years ago, to do that one video, 10 seconds of video would take an hour for the computer to decode, so it would take forever. Then it would go to blue screen of death, and the resources that the computer's using for this kind of math is insane. So ever since then, I've been trying to get it faster. And right now, what I'm holding up, this tablet, this is how it looks now. It is live, and so we no longer have to wait like forever for it to decode. So this is the Ghost Pro VR, and it's doing the amplification live. Any photographers like in the audience who have like a Canon camera, and any photographers? Okay. With photography, you'll notice something called long exposure. So this tech is doing it in a different way. It uses video frames instead of keeping the shutter open. It uses video frames as the ongoing data. So you'll see multiple things sometimes, but you'll want to look at it as one creature. But I think they're just moving very fast, so it looks confusing to some people. Okay, with the ongoing private research, this is, all I can say is he's an alien. He has an elongated skull. To me, it looks like he has a child he's holding. So I always get these good pictures of spirits holding children. So I don't think it's all bad, so don't be too afraid. But this is the same photo, but right side up. So they're coming, sometimes when you investigate your photos, you want to turn the photos around. If you don't get any evidence right side up, turn your phone upside down and look at some of the stuff, and you're going to be amazed. You know the silver spoon, when your image shows upside down, then you flip it over and it's right side up? Something like that is happening with light and the cameras or the way we see things. So just be aware that these upside down sometimes on us. He only shows in one frame of video also. So I put that little satellite image there. I'm thinking maybe it's a transmission from another world. I don't know, because it's hard for me to comprehend that there's an alien in the room with me. So I don't know. So more science needs to be done. I'm here to show you guys that it's possible, and you can take photos of it and get more intelligence from it. A lot of this stuff is best viewed on like an iPhone or an iPad because it has the most colors on the screen. If you look at an old laptop, the colors are washed out and stuff. So if you ever do this tech yourself, just remember you want the best looking screen. Just because some of the shades of gray that the ghosts are made out of, they get washed out with like a subpar screen. Okay, a little bit about GhostPro VR. It's an advanced camera image technology. It's not a game or a toy. It is an app on the App Store, but it's not a toy. A lot of people think it's a joke, but I needed some way for a computer to calculate this stuff, so it's mostly just think of it as a scientific tool. It amplifies movement and color change. It doesn't add graphics to anything. The cat you see right there is not an added graphic, it's a real cat. So I've caught spirits though around animals a lot. So it's like they're fascinated by our world too. All right, this technology has smart edge detection and high pass noise filtering, which means it gets rid of pareidolia and matrixing. This is a big argument with skeptics, is they think it's all in our minds and it's just some fabrication of the environment. But this technology actually helps alleviates a lot of the patterns in the environment that if it doesn't move, it's going to turn black. So it gets rid of false positives. In my quest to prove that ghosts are real, I said, maybe pictures aren't enough. What else do I need? So I said, let's ask these things some questions and get some answers. I said, one crazy way I'm going to show you is they're able to communicate using color change. Ghosts, like, they can't really type on a keyboard or do other stuff. Maybe they can, but they're not strong enough, or else we would just be having some crazy poltergeist activity all the time, but it's really rare. So I said, what properties does a transparent being have? And I came to the idea that they can change color, and it's true. So we can get intelligent dialogue by measuring color change. All right. Beyond that, why should we care about this? Why should we care about what anybody here is talking about? And I think the big reason why we all care is its evolution and progress. We want to know the truth. And if we never evolved, we would still be stuck in a cave, all of us, and it would be, I guess, really sad. So there's no air conditioning. All right, what can we do with this technology? For one, we can ghost hunt with it, and ghost hunt in a way to empower yourself. You want to see what's hanging around you. At least I do. I don't want any negative looking goat horn people around me at all, just because I'm not that way. I'm more positive. So I'll turn on my camera randomly and shoot and just see who's around. And if it's something bad, I say, please go. Thank you. Then, so they seem to come in and out at free will, especially in my place, probably because I'm doing all these experiments. I don't know, but I think it's with everybody. But some people need to be empowered because and these photographs should empower you because you can actually see in the sky and your space what's hanging around. So. Another thing this tech is good for is for depression or bereavement. If you had a passed on loved one, very sad. That's why it pushes me forward to create this, is because it makes me sad that someone dies. But this actually sort of proves that possibly there is an afterlife. There is stuff hanging around still. A cool thing I got, my mother-in-law was alive. She was living with us, and she saw me work on this technology every day, so she knew how it worked. She died, so 8 hours later after I wake up in the morning, I turn it on, And the first words I get on my communication screen is, it says ancestors alive. So sort of made me cry a little bit, because that sort of, she's helping me out from the other side, or someone else put a text message in for her. I don't know. So I can't say it was her. I just get 2 or 3 words, but to me, it was heartwarming, you know. So I was less sad, you know. So it's really good for depression. People who are depressed, instead of being depressed, ask if you have friends around you. You may have invisible friends that could help you out in your life. So that's what I'm getting to here is use this as a resource that's beyond anything you've ever even imagined. It's an intelligence resource. These things could travel at light speed, and they're predicting the future. So it could be used for solving crimes, possibly, so we could have a better world. We could have crime solved right away. I asked why 9/11 happened, and I got back for the greater good on the screen. So I think the spirits knew it was going to happen, but maybe it was to bring everybody together. I don't know, but stuff like that depresses me, but now I can ask maybe an invisible person what they think about the world. So it could be used in education and knowledge sharing. You can ask maybe Einstein or some smart spirit what they think about the project you're working on. That's why this technology is so good. I've asked the spirits for guidance, and I've gotten it. Future forecasting, predicting the future is really good. I had a trip, I was supposed to drive a car. I was supposed to take a certain car. I said, should I take that car? The word honey came back. Honey to me means sticky, so I'm like, I'm gonna get stuck. I'm not gonna take that car. So I took a rental car. The day I come back, I get in that car just to go to the store, and it got stuck on the side of the road. So I think that the spirits want to help, but most people just shut them out. So start listening to your ancestors and start listening to things in your world. Pay attention to nature. Nature has always given us clues to things, and I think this stuff is part of nature. I wouldn't be getting it on camera if it wasn't. Okay. Anybody having a hard time seeing the ghosts on the screen, or raise your hand if you can't see what this is. To me, it's all subjective a little bit, but to me it looks like a lady staring right at me, shoulders, everything. I could even see a hand down there, like fingers possibly. So I look for little stuff. This isn't just eyeballs and a mouth. This is everything. We're seeing foreheads, hair, we're seeing shoulders, we're seeing stuff like that. So anybody here colorblind? Okay. So when you show this technology to people and you show them a picture and they can't see it, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It means sometimes we're colorblind or we have a hard time seeing things. Anybody, raise your hand if you can't see the number inside of that circle. You can't see it? Okay, someone sitting next to them, tell them the number. Yeah, 16. So just find details like that. That's where the ghosts are. They're hovering around invisibility to like 5 degrees of color change. So a lot of us are missing some of the evidence just because our eyes aren't the greatest. All right, anybody gonna try this technology? Try it out when you get home? Raise your hand. I'm offering, when I talk to people, I'm offering a science fair $50 cash to your children. So if they enter this stuff in a science fair and get first place, just send me an email, I'll send you $50. It goes with the first person that does it though. The second person, I'm gonna weigh how far in between these first place contests are, but I want the general public to start experimenting with this technology. I want them to prove me wrong. It's going to be hard. So please just follow the instructions and show your children how to use it. That's the only way stuff gets done anyways, is when you pass it along to your children. Because when you guys leave tonight, you're probably going to be very tired and forget everything I just said. So, but try to remember, $50, your kid can make some money. That also goes for college. If someone puts it in a college thing and gets an award or something, let me know. I'll probably give them more money. Okay, this is some things I've learned with the technology. I've learned to be patient because you have to analyze your videos very slowly. You'll take a video, like a 1-minute video, but you have to go through it frame by frame. If that's not your cup of tea, it's okay. It's just, for me, like a scientist, I'm discovering the anomaly, it's magic to me. I'm like, how is this happening? So I've just learned to be more patient. I've learned that ghosts coexist with us and they share the same space as we do. It's strange, but I don't know why they're still here. So we're still all trying to figure that out. But I think they're here to help us. I always get, I have another couple of businesses, but I always get phone calls from people like, wow, the spirits must have said something, because I'm not advertising. So my budget in advertising is $0. It used to be $600 a month with Google, but I'm like, why am I advertising? I'm still getting phone calls. So I'm thinking the spirits are whispering in people's ears and getting me orders. So if you guys have stuff you want done in your life, don't be afraid to ask your invisible friends. God being one of them. But I think God is an overarching energy, and maybe he doesn't want to waste his time in a sense with each individual person. So if it gets out of control, maybe God can help, but don't be afraid of the other spirits because they're still alive. Okay. The ghosts are made of something similar to self-contained light. And I'm going to show you a cool example here. Okay, that's a really bright light. You can see it reflecting off the roof. You can see it at the source, but you cannot see it in the middle. It's crazy. This is common to us. We know this, but for ghost hunting, we've never really put 2 and 2 together until now. But I think ghosts are a cross-section of the light. You can see it. You can see the light with my hand now, and this is why in my, we want to shoot mist up in the air. So what the mist does is it shows you that the light exists. Now to a common person walking into the room, they wouldn't see the light. They wouldn't know it existed until they saw that it bounces off of something. So that's what's really cool is about light is it's invisible to us unless it bounces off of something. So it could be the brightest light in the world, we would never see it until it hits something. And I think the second it hits something, it comes into our reality. In between, I don't know what it's doing. I don't know why we can't see it. But we have to stop it and put something in it to look at. Now, I'm not claiming the mist is a ghost. I'm claiming that the patterns in the mist are the ghosts, and you've seen pictures of that. It's kind of like footprints in the sand. We're giving sand to the spirits so that they can interact with it so we can see them. You may start off taking ghost photos and get bored with it, and that's okay with me. I just want you guys to be aware that they do exist, and I'm sticking up for the ghosts, really. Okay, so to catch a ghost, you need the fine water mist and intersecting light and the Ghost Pro software. What the software does is it uses that light as a baseline measurement. So when something interacts with it, it knows that this was color number 16, but when something turns it to color 20, it says, oh, wait a minute, I'm gonna highlight this by 3 degrees. But when it turns up to color number 100, it's gonna highlight it by an even greater degrees. That's called a convolution filter. Very cool. Thanks to MIT. Okay, things to consider when inspecting your videos is the orientation, and I told you about that. Some things are upside down. This is a real photo that a photographer would take. This is called long exposure. This guy just turns his head. So this is what's happening in one single frame of video. The ghosts are moving so quick that we can sometimes see multiple eyeballs. We can see them upside down and sideways. Sometimes they're sitting on the floor, then they're standing up, all in one photo. So you just have to consider that when you're inspecting your photos, that it's not necessarily pareidolia or your mind making it up. It could be long exposure. The ghosts are not always in a position we think, and sometimes they're walking away. I've gotten a few ghosts that look like they don't have a head. I've gotten a few ghosts that look like they don't have a head, so it's, to some people, they say they saw a headless ghost. They could actually be walking away. You see the back of their head. They could have black hair. It could be a black knight. So some of that to consider is they're not always expected in the spot that you want them to be. And it's, I think they don't like being controlled. But if you just ask them nicely and be polite, I think you're going to get further in your life. They're small. Some of them are small. I've seen them as small as one foot. I've seen them big. You could use this technology in the clouds and look at the sky. You're going to see some really big spirits. 100 or 200 years ago, we would have said that was God. But there's too many of them. There can't be 100 gods up there. So I think there's just bigger overarching spirits for some reason. Pretty cool. Another thing is time dilation. It's a new science. Raise your hand if you saw the movie Interstellar. Okay, it deals with time dilation. In that movie, they get a wormhole to another planet because they're looking for a new place to live. They only spend like an hour and a half on the other planet, but when they come back to Earth, it's 14 years later. It is a super sad movie because the guy's daughters grew up. He didn't have time to be with his family. He was a cool astronaut. He only spent an hour and a half on the planet, but he comes back in 14 years. So to me, it was an eye-opener. And I think something like that is happening with ghosts. Time dilation also is nowadays the movement of something, if it has high velocity, they're in a different reality. So I'm thinking we could possibly look like statues to the spirits. So, and I think that's how they can predict the future. They can get around so quick and predict things because they could see stuff slowly happening. So I'm thinking that it all help. Okay. This is part of the technology. This is the equation I came up with. This is how they talk. This is how they talk through the technology. My book, Pocket Future, it deals with all of this. Basically, there's a big dictionary of 22,000 common English words and phrases from 0 to 22,000. And if they change a shade of color to one of those numbers, it triggers that word to show up on your screen. Most people would think it's random, but it's really not. Like I said, they're saying intelligent stuff through it. So maybe experiment with that. And that's how I think we can solve crimes, use the technology that way, ask them who murdered who, or give you a clue to look at, and you'll get some really good results. I've enclosed an iPhone inside of a box. So there's no light play, there's no other lights happening. Somehow the spirits get inside the box and they talk. So figure that one out. To me, it's amazing. And I think it's beyond the sensor having an error in it. It's beyond that. Otherwise, I would see random results. So if you get time, though, check out the book Pocket Future. All right, things you need. All right, things you need to catch a ghost on camera. You need an iPhone, the Ghost Pro VR app, tripod, dark color background with a focus subject, fine water mist, and a bright light. This is what's cool about this technology is you can use sunlight as your intersecting light. So you can catch ghosts outside right now if you want. This is the website I want everybody to go to if you're interested in technology, ghostpro.us. And there you'll get links to all the programs. And yeah, you can use your Android. It is a slower program. It only captures about 1 frame per second. The iPhone does 30 frames a second, so you're going to get a lot more detail with the iPhone. We're working on a better version for the Android, but there's some computer problems. Okay, there's step-by-step instructions on how to use Ghost Pro VR on the website. There's 30 instructions. And if you guys have questions, try to save them for the question and answer panel or talk to me in between breaks. My book, Pocket Future, I do have some with me. I'm going to give some away today. I kind of don't want you to buy any through me. I really want you to get it on the Kindle and leave a good review, because that way it kills 2 birds with 1 stone for me. So. And the story in Pocket Future, the technology is completely real, but the story is a little exaggerated, but it has stuff that I was inspired in my life to write. So, all right, let's catch a ghost on stage. Who wants to be the first volunteer? Stand inside of this. Stand in the box.
How do you feel?
This is my sister here, Mia. She's going to help me out. Get it to shine on camera, so we may have to do a couple of takes. Yeah.
I'm not spraying him, right?
No. We want the ghost to stand where you are, so stand right here. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the basic setup. We want a bright light shooting straight up. But if you're outside, the sun's shooting straight down. Just something that you can count on to make the water mist shine. Mia, go ahead and spray that because I want to see where it is. Yeah, like that. So, okay, so face where you think the ghost may show. You want to look at the ghost? Yeah, this is where you'll probably show up. This is what the computer's measuring right here. Okay. I'm going to use my iPhone here. Give me a second. So it's pretty easy. The iPhone has a timestamp thing where you click on and it'll put a timestamp in the corner, and that's good for, you can go back and forth in your video and know where you're at. First thing it said was soft drink. I think the ghost is thirsty. Okay, so calm yourself, and in your case, ask for somebody or something that you want to show, and just think about them. Then tell the audience what you're thinking.
I'm thinking of my grandpa who looks like W.C. Fields.
Okay, Grandpa, please show up. to start recording. And we're only going to shoot for maybe 30 seconds, so just shoot up in the air and I'll walk around to try to capture it. Yeah, I'll say okay. It says the word shower, so we can get wet. Okay, thanks, Ghost. We want to see Grandpa show up. All right, go ahead. Okay, that's about it. That's all you have to do. Then you save your video. Okay, you can sit for a bit. Okay. Okay, you stay up here and look at my screen, and you'll help me see if we see your grandpa. We might see something else, we don't know, because they're quick.
Sorry.
Okay. I've got a program called Chromic I use. Chromic brightens up the exposure, so it's a third-party program, but it brightens it up. So I'm using that right now. Give me a second. These are the words it says. I'm going to turn on the camera so everybody can see.
Never do it.
Hold on.
No.
Sorry. Sorry. Okay, guys, that's my iPhone there. So in the program, you go to the saved videos that you just made a video. Okay, this is the video in normal speed. Just tell me if anybody sees it goes normal speed. I see some patterns. Okay, so after, you don't have to look at it at normal speed. I was just doing that for an example. So our eyes miss a lot of stuff, and that's why we need to stop the video and then look through it slowly. Okay, so I'm pausing the video. Go ahead and stand right here. You can see this screen.
Oh.
Tell me if you see anything. So give us a second. We're inspecting the video.
There. Well, back a little, maybe. That. Oh, forward a little. Like one more click. Is that a face? Right.
This looks more.
Looks like a dog.
Yeah, like a dog.
That's what I'm like.
You having passed on dogs?
Yes. Yes, Lassie passed away a few years ago. That looks fine. Never mind. Go back. Forward a little bit. Oh, never mind. That's scary. Let's see. That just.
What do you see?
It looks profile like it's open. Click it looks like it's open its mouth. It looks scary. Like forward.
This one.
Like it's screaming.
Oh, screaming.
That's what it looks like to me. Very dark.
This looks like a guy to me. That one's not the greatest, but on the phone itself, I see something.
As soon as you go, it looks like it's screaming. Profile.
See, I see a guy there too.
Yeah, that's just noise and showing stuff.
Okay, give me a second. So we didn't really see nothing, so I'm recommending looking at it upside down. I see something there.
Cool.
See.
Little, yeah.
See, something like that. That guy came in upside down. To me, it's a little hard to see, but I see two eyes there, kind of a person's head tilted a little bit. A little hard. But keep practicing. That's what this is about, is taking more than one photo and then just dismissing it. Please don't dismiss this. All right.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah. Anybody else want to try? Okay, sure. Okay, Mia.
Oh,
What's your name? Hawk. Hawk? Okay, Hawk. If there was a spirit to show up, who would you want to show on camera? Nikki?
Yep.
Okay. What's Nikki's relation?
She belongs to me.
Okay. Sounds like a spirit that helps this guy out a lot. Nikki? Put your hand in the shot this time. This is what we forgot to do, but we want to shoot the person's hand in the shot, and that's called a focus subject. Those other pictures are a little blurry, and if the camera can focus on something besides blackness, it'll help with the photography. Okay, you ready? You said Nikki? Hold on. Let's go, Nikki. Okay. Okay, Nikki, I'm recording now. Try to show in the light if you can, please. And we're gonna spray it with water mist to see you better. Just leave it there.
Okay.
Nikki, try to show up with his hand or underneath his hand or above it if you can. Okay, good. Okay, you can rest. Okay, there's two save buttons on the iPhone, and I think because I'm the one that programmed this, but I think it goes to an edit video feature, so you can clip it or something. So I just recommend just hitting save twice if you're using an iPhone. Okay, we're looking for Nikki, everybody. This program is called Chromic. It's a free program. It just brightens the exposure. Minutes? All right. This is what I mean by patient. You have to wait for things. Okay, so Chromic got done making the exposure. Some of the good photography I do, I also use the Instagram filters to bring out more brightness and stuff, so just be aware of that. What is metronome?
No idea. A metronome?
Yeah.
Machine that keeps beat.
Oh, a pacer?
Yeah. That's what metronome is.
Yeah, pay attention to the words that show up. Somehow they're talking through that stuff.
If metronome would be steady.
Have you seen Nikki like in real life and see her?
I see her frequently.
Okay.
She's the real thing.
Okay.
Not a physical thing, but a real thing. She generally shows up as either a cat or a woman, so you never know what you're gonna get.
There's a lot of stuff happening in this shot. I see something down here. Then this is the real good, like human face I see. Hard. These colors aren't the greatest on these monitors, but you kind of see that one. See that? She's like tilted and bored with us.
That's Nikki.
You think so?
Tilted and bored sounds about right.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Well, just standing in one place, yeah, she's gonna get bored out of her mind.
Yeah.
Or more than like a few seconds.
Yeah, that's another thing. We're thinking the spirits are moving so fast they get bored with us. So if you can maintain your concentration, if you're talking to them, it's a good thing because you're sort of giving them something to latch onto and listen to.
The more you focus on them, the more you focus on the spiritual, the more that they can. Basically, the more you focus on the spiritual, there's a wall there, and you're both reaching towards the wall, and the closer you get, the more your time dilation slows down, so you're more on the same time. So the more you focus on it, the more time slows down enough for you guys to actually interact. And then when you stop concentrating, it goes fast again and they're on. But that's my experience.
Sounds like he's onto something for sure.
I know.
See, I see something pretty good there. All right, guys. This will be my last one, but if you use the tech at home, yeah, don't freak out. You know how I said my car got stuck? It said the word tow truck. It's just interesting synchronicities like that. Or someone's car is going to get towed. Remember earlier, people were in the wrong parking spot. So. Okay, everybody, thanks for listening.
Yeah! Okay.
Thanks for helping out. Yeah.
All right, guys, that was Mr. Joe Damari and his Ghost Proofer Technology. Ghost Pro VR Technology. All right, he puts the boundaries of reality for you. So, yeah. I can't remember the commercial, Jerry. Come on. Boundaries of reality. All right. Guys, let's make a quick note before we ask another trivia question, give away another prize. This is Heather back here. She is doing tarot readings and she is doing them for tips. So if you guys are interested in getting tarot reading from her, she will be here. Heather, are you going to be here most of the night? Okay, excellent, excellent. Okay, all right. So she's doing a tarot card reading. We're going to ask another trivia question. Jason, do you want to ask it?
Do it.
All right.
Yo.
And the prize is going to be a copy of Mr. Joshua Cutch's book, A Trojan Feast.
Hit me in the crotch.
Very excellent book. So
It's good. Hit the people in the crotch.
y'all doing?
Okay. Yeah, everybody. All right, let's read another Mo Yo Mama joke from Snapseed Pop and Kid Rank. Thank them very much for what they do for all of us.
1996.
This is from 96. Your mama's so ugly she couldn't get laid in prison with a fistful of pardons. So that's our Mo Mama joke for that. All right, now you guys ready for, get your brain ready. We're going to have a question for you here. Question number 3. What was the name of the poltergeist case that took place in England that is featured inexactly in The Conjuring 2? First person. Enfield.
That is
Enfield. That's right. And it's an Ian Field. You win an awesome book. The author is here, so you should get him to sign it. Jonathan's around here somewhere, so you can get that to happen. Yeah, also you get a Slim Jim, just for the hell of it. So, 'cause why not? All right. And we'll hold that for a second.
That was wonderful.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to get set up for the next speaker. Mr. Zach Hunt is next, and he's going to talk about his book, Unraptured. So just give us about a little less than 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Hey guys, we're back. Hope you enjoy the first block of the Strange Realities 2019 live streaming event. We're looking forward to the actual live Strange Realities 2020 event coming up September 25th, 26th, and 27th. We hope to see you guys there.
Yeah, in less than a month, guys. So it's only $20. We've got I think last time we had like 9 speakers, or actually 8 speakers, and this year we've got 21. So come join us. So it's $20. So that's less than $1 a speaker, guys. So you really want to come check that out. You can find the information for that on www.strangerealitiesconference.com. Okay. We are going to take a little break, and we are going to be back here in roughly 15 to 20 minutes. So come join us then for another block of 3 speakers. We've got coming up Zach Hunt, Josh Cutchin, and Tim Banals in this 3-hour block. So join us then, guys.